Greetings, Taku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you all yet another The Flash episode review right here on Otaku Assemble! Weekly, and as always, here to bring you the latest in this week's The Flash episode review. And this is my review of Season 2, Episode 4, entitled The Fury of the Firestorm. I just had to say it like that because it's such a cool title. Alright, so let's jump into this week's episode. Now, the major plot for this week's episode was Dr. Stein having to find a suitable replacement for Ronnie due to the side effects that he was receiving from Ronnie's absence, what with the Firestorm Matrix, and how it was negatively affecting him being the sole living carrier of it. So, the bulk of the episode centers around the team trying to find a suitable replacement for Ronnie. Someone who's compatible with Dr. Stein and someone who can merge with him successfully, because as we learned in this week's episode, it's not just a matter of someone having the same construct, the same molecular capabilities in order to be able to facilitate the Firestorm Matrix. There has to be a cohesiveness to it. There has to be a 100% compatibility with it. So in this week's episode, we get introduced to two characters. Jefferson Jackson, aka Jax, who I'm really digging. I really dug Jax. I like what they did with his backstory. He had that whole cyborg sort of thing. You know, he was a high school football player. The particle accelerator accident, you know, he got affected by the dark matter. And I believe they said he suffered a torn ACL, and I forget what the other injury he suffered, but pretty much it put an end to his football career. And through, you know, these extraordinary circumstances, he got an opportunity to become a superhero. That's Cyborg's backstory. So I thought that was really cool. So yeah, I really like Jefferson. I really like the actor portraying him. I liked, I just dug him. And hell, look, guys, you will recall from my Arrow episode review I did a couple of, I think it was the season 4 episode 1 review I did for Arrow, where I was like, man, we're getting all these black superheroes. This is awesome. And now we got another one. The other character we got introduced to was Dr. Henry, how do you pronounce his last name? Hewitt, I think was his name. Anywho, I actually looked him up, and he is a supervillain named Togamak, which they did use that moniker in this episode. But the way they introduced him and the way they pretty much set him up in this episode was that he was the first attempt, the first person that they tried to actually merge with Dr. Stein, and it didn't work. But because of the dark matter he was exposed to at the time of the particle accelerator explosion, and because of the attempt to merge with Dr. Stein, that actually awakened his powers, but his are much more, they're more aggressive, they're more out of control, and he's pretty much like a walking battery. You know, he can charge himself from other energy sources, and he's pretty much a nuclear cannon. Just a huge, you know, he's like a big surge protector, a huge, you know, surge in power. But I like the way I like how the character was written, because I immediately knew he was going to be a supervillain. The second that the attempt to merge with Dr. Stein didn't work and he got ticked off, I immediately knew, I said, that guy's going to be a villain. And then at the end of that scene, if you all will recall, you saw the glowing hand, how he had the energy kind of radiating off of his hand. I'm like, he's going to be a supervillain. And lo and behold, I think it was only 3/4 into the episode when his powers actually did activate, and it was like, yep, supervillain. But all in all, I mean, I did both of the characters. Also, the actor playing Togamak, I believe he also played in Supernatural. I want to say season 5, I believe. Because I've seen that actor before on CW. Anyway, he's a good actor. And I just like how how do you describe it? Yeah, of course, you know, they mention how he has anger management issues and he's a very angry, violent guy. But I also like how that this sort of pretentiousness that he has, how he thinks he's smarter than everyone else. I could definitely see some interesting things happening should they decide to use his character again, especially if it gets to the point where he tries to outsmart the rest of the team, or he becomes more of a calculated villain rather than just a loose cannon. A lot of good possibilities there. But all in all, with those two characters, I dug them. Jefferson, Jax, I like him. Now, I do have questions about Firestorm and his participation in Legends of Tomorrow, because once again, goes back to what my previous statements about, you know, Ronnie dying again and having to find a new partner for Stein and Firestorm. My thing is this: is Ronnie not supposed to be in Legends of Tomorrow? If he is, then what happens to Jax? Or is Jax going to be the Firestorm in Legends of Tomorrow? Because if memory serves, when I saw that trailer, no, it was Ronnie. So, who knows? But for the time being, it looks like he's at least going to be Firestorm on The Flash, and I'm all for it. Black superheroes, yes, yes. And while we're on the note of black superheroes, let's talk about the West, sis, in this week's episode. So, we are pretty much following up on the story of Iris's mother returning to Central City. In last week's episode, we had, you know, Joe told Iris that her mother was still alive and that she was back in town. She wanted to meet her, this, that, and the other. So, of course, Iris decides she meets with her mother. And for the record, let me go ahead and make this comment here. I am impressed with how they've been writing Iris this season. I've said it in every episode review I've done on this season so far. And this episode, man, because I think they finally got it right, guys. I'm hoping, knock on wood, I'm hoping I'm not shooting myself in the foot for saying this, but it seems like they finally got it right. Why? Because Iris is acting more maturely. She's being reasonable. She's being responsible. She's not necessarily acting off of emotion and emotional triggers. I mean, the best way I can describe it, it seems like she's acting less with her emotions and more with her brain. She's thinking. Okay, she's thinking. Now, of course, yes, there is emotion in this situation. I mean, we're talking about a woman who walked out on her as a child, and how that affected her, how that affected her father, so on and so forth. So there is a lot of emotional content within this subplot. But I like how Iris is acting like an adult. She's acting like her age. She isn't acting like a spoiled, selfish, whiny, braggy teen that they wrote her like in season 1. No, we're getting a different Iris, and I am all for it, and I'm loving it. But the big surprise that came out of that subplot in this week's episode was the reveal that Iris had discovered that her mother, Francine, had a son 8 months after she left Central City. This is where Wally's coming from. So you all will remember I mentioned, I believe it was in my previous The Flash episode review, where I said that Francine could potentially be, because I couldn't figure out why are we getting this subplot. And why are we getting it now? Like, what does it have to do with the overall story? Where does it tie in? And I mentioned there could be a very good chance that Francine is the means through which Wally is introduced into the show. But I didn't know how they would actually pull that off. Why? Because Wally's last name is West. He would be from Joe's side of the family, and Francine is Iris's mother. Francine is a West by marriage, not by blood. So how would a cousin be introduced through Francine? Apparently, the writers have decided to make Wally Iris's brother and not her cousin like he is in the comics. So now I'm like, okay, now I get it. So I'm assuming that from the next chapter in this story will be Iris on the quest to find her long lost brother. Which is cool. I like that. Now Iris sort of has this, discovery, this discovery story, this discovery mission. I like that. Cool. Also, here's another thing too, and you all will remember because I mentioned it in my episode 1 review, but I think I also mentioned it in my episode 2 review when I said that, you know, episodes 1 and 2, the way they played Iris up is that, okay, yeah, they were writing her as a strong support. But I'm like, what's going to be her story? What's going to be the story that brings her to the forefront, that makes her, you know, a main character, and that makes her a key player in the narrative that we're getting throughout the season? And this could be it. This discovery journey. This could be Iris's story for this season. So I'm all for it. I'm liking what I'm seeing. All right, so for the last few minutes I got left, other things I want to talk about in this episode. The Barry Patty thing. I see them trying to set that up as a romantic relationship. Truth be told, I don't really have much thoughts on it right now, and that's just because, like, we haven't gotten the ask out scene, we haven't gotten a single dating scene or anything like that. Like they haven't taken it as far as they did with Barry and what's my girl from season 1? I forget her name already. The sports writer that he was dating for like 2 episodes in season 1. They haven't even taken it that far yet. So I'm still gonna wait and see what happens with that. But here's the thing though, and this is why I think that relationship, it won't bother me as much, or that it could actually turn out to be something, you know, I'm looking at that potential relationship as a change of pace. Because here's the thing, I think this episode was the first time they brought up the fact that Barry still has feelings for Iris. Because I don't think they've touched on that at all so far this season. And Joe's the one who tells Barry, it's like, yo, you know, Iris is your first love. You'll never feel the same way about another person as you do for Iris, but you shouldn't let that hold you back from exploring something new. And then of course we had that same message. Barry gave that message to Caitlin when they were talking about whether or not Jax would work out as Stein's partner. And so even at the end of the episode, Joe reaffirms that message by saying, there's a lesson in that for you, Barry. Here's the thing. This is why I'm kind of interested in it. It's a change of pace, because if Iris is going to be doing, you know, this discovery journey with trying to find Wally, right? Okay, Iris has something that's going to potentially separate her from the rest of the crew for this season, and that's her story, and that's okay. That is perfectly fine. But if that's going to be Iris's main focus for the season, Barry, that separation, that initial separation would give Barry more time to explore a potential new relationship with Patty. And that's cool. That's cool, because once again, remember, we know Iris and Barry is supposed to happen at some point in time, but we don't need to try to force that right now. No. The lines were drawn last season. We already had Eddie be a casualty, a victim of the love triangle they did in season 1, so we don't need to do that again. No. Let Iris go find Wally. Let her be that focus. Let Barry take care of the Earth 2 metahumans and of Zoom and everything going on with Central City. And yes, if he does decide to go ahead and pursue a relationship with Patty, cool. Besides, we know it's going to be temporary anyway, so let's change things up a bit, okay? Let's change things up a bit. All right. Since I'm talking about Barry and Patty, let me talk about the cliffhanger from this episode. All right. So, throughout the episode, Barry and Patty, their exchanges, you know, that first scene with them when Patty goes with him talking about she has, you know, samples from a crime scene, and somebody said something about they saw like a shark man or a human shark or something, right? And the first thing I thought of, because I caught that, I went, wait a minute, they're not doing King Shark in this series, are they? And then, of course, the second scene, Barry's like, no, it wasn't, you know, shark DNA or anything, it was human, right? So Patty's like, okay, so apparently we're looking for a metahuman who can, you know, has teeth like a shark or something like that, or something of that matter. So I'm thinking, okay, that was a nice little Easter egg, a little joke. Okay, they're not doing Shark King, right? I mean, King Shark, right? And then in the last scene of the episode, no, Shark King showed up in his entirety. And I'm watching like, they did King Shark. Wow. Now keep in mind, because remember, you guys remember what I said. I am always shocked at the degrees in which that this show taps into the comic book world. Now, yeah, we got Grodd in season 1, and yeah, that was awesome. But King Shark, and what tripped me out the most, and it's the same thing I felt about Grodd in season 1. The CGI is actually pretty good. Granted, of course, yeah, this isn't, Michael Bay Transformers level CGI or anything like that, but for a television budget and just the scene, the way King Shark looks holding Barry, I'm like, dude, the effects on this show, time and time again, I'm just like, wow. For them to be able to animate that off of a television budget, I'm like, bravo, gentlemen. Bravo. Wow. And then, of course, the biggest cliffhanger, the big thing that left us was the fact that who saves Barry from King Shark? Earth 2 Wells. Remember, the cliffhanger from last week's episode was Earth 2 Wells coming forth onto Earth 1, right? And then we got a scene earlier in this week's episode when Wells, stole something from, I forget the name of the company, but it's the rival company to Star Labs. And then homegirl was like, oh, Harrison Wells, that's who I saw, at the time of the robbery. She's talking to Joe about it, and Joe's like, wait, what? And I will say this, though. How did Joe, when she mentioned, she was like, I realized that Wells' death, was inconclusive, and there's not enough information on it. Is there a chance he could have survived? And she even told Joe the thing that was different about him, the fact he was walking, and the fact that Joe didn't even think, oh wait, it's the Earth 2 doppelganger. Joe, look, I understand you got things going on with Francine. Listen, hey, every time an ex shows up in one of our lives, yeah, we lose sight of things, right? We get confused, we get, discombobulated, hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok. I know, we lose track of things, but Joe, you gotta remember we are dealing with alternate realities, alternate universes and dimensions. Dude, when someone comes back from the dead, you have to look into that, man. Don't just pass it off as that's impossible. Joe, you got abducted by a super genius talking gorilla. How is anything that goes on in your world impossible anymore? Come on, Joe. Come on. All right, so that's where we left off with this week's episode, and apparently, based off of the preview for next week's episode, it does look like, number one, the Earth 2 Wells is a good guy, or at least an anti-hero to some degree. He's not a villain. Apparently, it's not Zoom, because he has actually come to Earth 1, apparently, to try and fight Zoom. Speaking of which, where was Jay in this week's episode? Remember, Jay never went back to Earth 2. He decided he was going to stick around, but I don't remember what happened with Jay. Why was he absent in this week's episode? Granted, they didn't need him to because they, because the focus was on Firestorm, but still, where was Jay? Curious. Unless there's something I missed. So anywho, all in all, that's going to wrap up my review for this week's episode of The Flash. I want to thank you all for joining me again this weekend. In the comments below, please, guys, leave your thoughts on anything I discussed in this week's review. Also, I want to hear some of your guys' thoughts for next week's episode. We got Harrison Wells back in the house, baby. What's going to happen with that? Come on, y'all got to tell me. Y'all got to let me know. Oh, and since apparently this worked really well with my Supergirl review, which for those of you all who have yet to check it out, please feel free. It is already on the OAW YouTube channel. Check out my Supergirl review. But if you've been watching this review all the way to the end, please, in the comments below, write Scarlet Speedster. Alright. And also, guys, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel, please, if you like my reviews and if you want to see more of them, be in the know-how, be up to date. Please subscribe to my channel below, like below, and if you have friends, family, whoever who might enjoy my material, please feel free to share my videos. Tomorrow night will be my Arrow episode review. I'm either going to watch that tonight or I'm going to watch that tomorrow morning. But that's going to be up for tomorrow. And that's about it. With that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, signing off. And until next time, peace.